It is 5:45 and we will begin this public meeting this evening on September the 3rd, Tuesday. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? If so, can you please describe it and make me aware? No disclosures. So we'll move forward with the purpose of the meeting and I will read the preamble. So this public meeting, personal information is collected at this public hearing and is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning. The purpose of public meetings is to present applications in a public forum. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, council members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions for all members of the public once they've made their submissions. Following council's decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a specified person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but specified person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the specified person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So we'll move forward with number 3.1 D14 2024-008 Township Initiated Zoning Bylaw Amendment Accessibility Amendments. So Madam Planner, Acting CAO, we'll turn over the floor to you and then we'll go from there.
Screen. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment that's being brought forward, initiated by the township to amend the zoning bylaw to include a definition of barrier-free building components, amend provisions to exempt barrier-free building components from lot coverage, as well as add a general provision that would allow barrier-free building components to encroach into any yard as long as it's set back 0.3 meters from a lot line and not encroaching into any drainage system, so a swale or a ditch. This is being brought forward based on a previous file to the Committee of Adjustment where there was a proposed deck that needed minor variances to allow for accessibility structures, and it was a time-sensitive matter. Had we not needed to do minor variances, it would have been a lot easier for the applicant to proceed. There was also some financial hardships in terms of needing to build the barrier-free components. So this is really being brought forward to address those situations. Notice has been brought forward in accordance with, or notice has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act. This one, because it's a township initiated amendment, was advertised in the local newspapers. There's been no input received from any members of the public in response to that notification, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey. I'm going to get back in that swing.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to you to the acting CAO. Now this, I think I recall the meeting that this came about with a wheelchair ramp that was close to the property line, and I think we ended up, did we not refund the fee? Okay, so this will take care of all the outdoor. Now, what about the indoor accessibility issues within the home?
Through you, if it's interior accessibility, it wouldn't be subject to minor variances, so it'll be fine.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So yes, as Councillor Lackey had mentioned, it was due to the one request for refund. One of my questions is that it does pertain to swimming pools. Is there any difference between above ground or in-ground pool? And because the in-ground pool certainly takes more percentage of the land on a permanent basis than an above ground pool, because it's can be taken down seasonally if the owner so wished. And again, the fees have already been talked about on that previous one. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, the reference to swimming pools is just in the definition of lot coverage. So swimming pools, whether above ground or in ground, do count towards lot coverage, but that doesn't impact the building coverage as it relates to structures because this is exempting them from being subject to lot coverage.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, should a said property that puts up a accessibility ramp per se should sell, is there any issues with the new owner removing that structure?
So you know, there wouldn't be any concerns with that. As long as they don't need it, it would be fine to remove.
Right. So they still have to go through an application for demolition, so to speak?
That I'm not certain of. I don't know. A building permit would be required to build an accessibility structure,
Right.
but I don't know from an impact perspective that it adds to the assessment of a property. So I don't know that a demolition permit would actually be required for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions in regards to this item? Anything from the gallery? Okay, we'll move on to 3.2 D14 2024 010. Not till 6. Oh, we can't go till 6. We're gonna have to sit here. So I have to adjourn this meeting. Adjourn this meeting and then start the next one.
But it's.
We had identified that this item would be at 6 PM. So we apologize, but everybody's gonna, maybe we'll mute while we're online rather than adjourn and then come back. It is 6 PM and we will reconvene the public meeting. And we are at 3.2 on the agenda, D14-2024-010 zoning bylaw amendment application 455 Hague Road. Madam Planner?
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the property located at 455 Hague Road. The application is being brought forward as a condition of provisional consent approval for consent application B 04623. The application was proposed to sever an 11.8 acre parcel from the front of the property that contained an existing house. The remaining retained parcel, which has an area of 27.75 hectares, is proposed to be rezoned to an AG-12 site-specific zone to preclude any development other than agricultural uses on the property. Notice for this meeting has been advertised in accordance with the Planning Act by mail out to all landowners within 120 meters of the subject property. There have been no inquiries or comments received in response to the application. And staff are bringing this forward with a recommendation on the committee of the whole agenda for later this evening. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just a comment. This is basically I would call it a housekeeping item in the sense that the agricultural land has changed hands, and it's just a matter of a severance for the house and outlying buildings to remain habitable, if you will. And the fact that it's not the first time we've dealt with applications to keep agricultural land agriculture and no housing development. So I just see this as a repeat of what we've had before in other applications, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions in regards to the application at hand? Mr. Crombach, do you have anything to say? Okay, so seeing no further comments or questions, and there's nobody online that is looking to make comments about that, we will go to the motion for adjournment coming from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the public meeting adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Thank you. We will reconvene the committee of the whole meeting for tonight at 6:30 PM. Thank you very much. Just a 1-minute warning. We'll begin council or committee of the whole at 6:30. I'll just give warning to those out in the front lobby that will begin this meeting. Okay. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 PM. And first item on the agenda is the motion to adopt, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the agenda be adopted as circulated. I'd ask the gallery to be quiet at this time so that we can continue. Thank you. So the motion is on the floor to adopt the agenda. Any errors or omissions, additions? Call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. So number 3 is declaration of pecuniary interests and the general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under staff report 6.6, the Leeds County OPP Detachment Board, as I am a member, I will be recusing myself.
Fair enough. Any other disclosures of interest? I have received your form and it will be filed with the clerk. Thank you. Next item is number 4, which is in camera, and there is no in-camera session this evening. And number 5, which is delegations and presentations. And again, there are no delegations or presentations. So we'll move straight into staff reports. And I have a preamble that I will read. So to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to address the committee tonight, we're asking you to sign up on the sheets located outside the door here. If you have not signed up on the sheet, we will open the floor up for further speakers, but keep in mind that we have more on the agenda as well. So please be mindful that the number of speakers are that it might be registered, and limit your submissions to a maximum of 5 minutes. Personal information collected at this meeting hearing is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are made available to the public. There are 2 reports being presented to the Committee of the Whole this evening regarding municipal drains. Each report is being presented separately. Following presentations from the consultant, council members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions from the registered virtual and in-person attendees. When you speak, please provide your name and address for recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to myself, the chair of the meeting. The consultant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. The information reports being presented to the Committee of the Whole are being brought forward to allow for public input. Any recommendations will be brought forward to a subsequent meeting. To ensure you are provided notice of any future meetings, please ensure that you have added your contact information to the mailing list in the lobby if you haven't done so already. Thank you. So we'll move forward with 6.1, engineer's report for modification and the improvement of the Boulevard Webster Municipal Drain. And the motion comes forward from Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council accept the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultants, Inc., entitled Engineer's Report for the Modification and Improvement of the Boulevard Webster Municipal Drain, dated May 2024, and that the staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration to give first and second reading of the bylaw in accordance with sections 42 and 45 of the current Drainage Act RSO 1990 CD 17. So the motion is now on the floor. If the consultant would like to come forward to present. Oh, we got it. Got it going. Perfect. If you want to move the arm up a little bit, there we go. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the meeting for the meeting to consider for the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain. It is the second meeting in the official steps within the Drainage Act. The first one was the on-site meeting, which actually occurred back in 2018. And this is the official second meeting. So this is the general drainage area for the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain. Through the middle here is King Street, and at the top end, or I guess the bottom end, because that's the outlet, that would be Fairfax Road. And bounded by an unopened road allowance with the village of Lansdowne just to the east. The Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain was originally constructed in 1974 under a provision of a report by A.J. Graham dated December 7th, 1973, and it was revised April 1st of 1974. The 1974 report and bylaw currently governs activities on the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain. Robinson Consultants Inc. was appointed by the Township of Leeds and Thousand Islands on March 12th, 2018 to complete an engineer's report on the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain. The amendment to the engineer's report for modifications to the municipal drain was initiated by the Township of Leeds and Thousand Islands under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for improvements and maintenance. An on-site meeting of the affected owners and concerned parties was held May 15th, 2018. The primary concerns mentioned at the on-site meeting were as follows. The primary one being the overall cost of the project, improved capacity for lands and roads, and the one concern that was mentioned at that meeting was the overall cost of the drain. Overall, not very many people attended the initial meeting. The modifications to the existing Poldevart municipal drain include improved drainage capacity for lands and roads and a fair and equitable distribution of costs for future maintenance. The following works will be implemented for the construction of the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain. Replacement and addition of specific culverts due to capacity issues. Reestablishment of a smooth and positive slope profile along the entire length of the drain. Periodic rock check dams and sediment basins to reduce sediment transport and improve downstream water quality. And seeding and willow staking in limited areas of disturbed areas and buffer zones to reduce erosion along the banks. The willow staking was actually a Department of Fisheries and Oceans requirement for their permit. Not something that we typically do, but it has been done. The Drainage Act requires the total estimated cost be assessed against the affected lands and roads under the categories of benefit, outlet, injuring liability, special benefit, and special assessment of public utility or road authority under Section 26. On this project, there is no assessment for injuring liability. Benefit, by definition under the Drainage Act, is the advantages to any lands, roads, building, or other structures from the construction, improvement, repair, or maintenance of a drainage works, such as will result in a higher market value or increased crop production or improved appearance or better control of surface or subsurface water or any other advantages relating to the betterment of lands, roads, buildings, or other structures. Lands located immediately adjacent to the drain that are determined to receive a benefit are assessed for benefit. Benefit assessments for construction or maintenance are only charged against the properties in the section where work is being completed. Outlet, as opposed to benefit, is charged to everybody who contributes flow to the drain. Under the Drainage Act, the definition of outlet is lands and roads that may be accessible for outlet liability are those lands that use a drainage works as an outlet for which after construction or improvement of the drainage works, an improved outlet is provided. The outlet or improved outlet may be provided either directly or indirectly through any drainage works, overland flow, swale, ravine, creek, or water course. Assessment for outlet is based on the location, area, and rate of flow. Each parcel of land that lies within the drainage basin and is upstream of the location where construction or maintenance is being undertaken pays for a portion of the construction or maintenance through outlet assessment. Special benefit is any additional work or feature included in the construction, repair, or improvement of drainage works beyond the mandated design standards. Special benefit is governed by Section 24 and Section 26 of the Drainage Act. This allows for an assessment against lands for which a special benefit has been provided based on the actual cost of the special benefit feature or the increased cost of drainage works due to the special benefit feature. Typically, this is for road authorities related to culverts. Special assessment is charged where special engineering or design and construction is required to ensure adequate outlet downstream of the property. The total estimated cost to complete works within the Poldervaart Webster Municipal Drain, including engineering, administration, construction, contingency, mitigation, allowances, and permit fees, was estimated as required by the Drainage Act. However, it is not anticipated that the current proposed maintenance or construction is immediately required and may be completed in phases or scheduled as required. As such, the schedules of assessment provided in this report indicate an initial assessment for the cost of the new engineer's report only. The costs that are being considered for distribution are outlined on this slide, with engineering at $42,500 per section for a total of $85,000. And a net HST charge of $1,496 for a total of $8,496. There are special benefits that are charged to the Trans-Northern Pipeline, the Township Road Authority, the County Road Authority for a total of $6,487, resulting in a net total assessed to properties of $80,008.80. Factors that are used in the consideration of the assessments are outlined as follows: land use factor, distance factor, maintenance sections and subsection factors, and the agricultural drainage infrastructure program grant, all of which will be provided in detail on the following slides. The land use factor is included in the assessment calculation to account for the volume of runoff from lands used for different purposes. A numeric value of 1 is given to all agricultural, rural use, large lot residential greater than 2 hectares, vacant lands, unprotected forest lands that are not subject to a managed forest agreement, or any land where an alternative factor is not otherwise specified. A value of 2 is given to small lots less than 5 acres or 2 hectares on the basis that more water runs off from those properties. They have a big house, a paved driveway, that sort of thing on a much smaller lot, so more water runs off. And a value of 4 is given to land classified as higher density residential, institutional, commercial, or as a road right-of-way. So in the same way that more water runs off from a residential property than an agricultural property, more water also runs off from a road about 4 times as much. And that's why these factors are applied. A distance factor was developed to account for the proximity of land to the drain and the relative amount of water that will enter the drain. A band is drawn on each side of the drain, approximately 200 meters, a second band at 600 meters, and a third at approximately 1,000 meters from the drain. A property that is included entirely within the first band is given a distance factor of 1. A property that falls entirely within the second band is given a distance factor of 0.75. This reduces the assessment on the basis that you're further away from the drain and less likely that your water will be fully able to make it to the drain without being intercepted or ponded or evaporating or any of those types of factors. So these factors are meant to account for that. A property that falls entirely within the third band is given a distance factor of 0.5, so again less, and the land that's located beyond 1,000 meters from the drain outside of the third band is given a factor of 0.3. For the Poldevart Webster municipal drain, these bands are shown around the blue area with the green lines at 200, 600, and 1,000 around the first section of the drain, and the pink or purple lines around the second section of the drain at 200, 600, and 1,000 meters away from the drain. The maintenance sections, i.e. the two sections that the drain was split up into, are provided in order to develop schedules for the future maintenance charges of the Poldevart Webster municipal drain. Each section is further divided into three parts. The upstream part is assigned a factor of 1, the middle part a factor of 0.66, and the downstream part a factor of 0.33. Each individual property is assigned a subsection factor corresponding to the location where the drainage from the property enters the drain. All properties upstream of the section where the maintenance is being undertaken are assigned a factor of 0.1. So to summarize this, if you can only use 1/3 of the drain, you're only paying for 1/3 of the drain, which is why the downstream 1/3 factor is applied. This slide outlines the two sections. Again, the green one starting at Fairfax Road and coming up to about the bottom third of the drain, where the type of drain actually changes quite significantly. And then the upstream part where the majority of the drain is all the same as well. That's why it was split into two sections at that location. Grant eligibility may also affect your assessments. The Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, OMAFRA, outlines the policies and procedures with regard to the 33% grant available to properties determined to be agricultural lands under the Agricultural Drainage Infrastructure Program. In general, to be eligible, the property must be eligible for the farm tax class. And I would also advise, particularly because only engineering is included in our assessment, that work must actually be completed on the drain. An engineering report alone would not be eligible for the 33%. So some work must be completed on the drain in order for anybody to be eligible for the 33% grant. The report cost will be eligible where some initial work is completed. So while the current recommendation for council is that no work is actually going to be completed or it will be completed in phases, I honestly recommend doing some small portion of the work at least before the engineer's report is built out, so that both the engineer's report and the work that is completed can receive the 33% grant to the benefit of all the agricultural properties. To be eligible for the farm tax class, a property must be assessed as farmland by MPAC, used as part of an ongoing farming operation generating at least $7,000 in annual revenue, hold a valid farm business registration number, and be registered with Agricorp and have more than 50% Canadian ownership. Allowances are also paid to the affected lands for land lost to ditch widening or relocating, and for crop loss and on agricultural lands where excavated material is spread. 100% of the crop loss for the area disturbed is covered for the first year, 60% for the second year on the basis that it won't fully recovered until properly tilled at least 2 years, 40% for the third year, and then no more crop loss after that. It's expected to have fully recovered. Crop values are based on an average of typical area crops at OMAFR reported yields and the current, at the date of publication of the engineer's report, value for the reported crop prices by Agricorp. Following this meeting, a court of revision meeting, if first and second reading is given to the bylaw, a court of revision hearing will be scheduled following the meeting to consider. A landowner assessed for the drainage works may appeal to the court of revision on any of the following grounds under the Ontario Drainage Act: that any land or road assessment is too high or too low, that any land or road that should have been assessed has not been assessed, or that due consideration has not been given to the appropriate land use. Where any landowner is making an appeal to the court of revision, written notification and supporting documentation must be received by the municipality a minimum of 10 days prior to the court of revision. So following this meeting, if you're prepared to give first and second reading, there are other avenues of appeal for the parties that are concerned. Future maintenance and repair of the Poldevart Webster Municipal Drain shall be the responsibility of the Township of Leeds and Thousand Islands. Individual landowners are responsible for periodic inspection of the drain and reporting maintenance problems to the township. The cost of future maintenance is to be assessed in the same proportion as the schedules of assessment. Therefore, maintenance costs are to be levied against lands upstream from the location where the maintenance work is being completed, pro rata with the assessments for benefit outlet in the report, all of which is in accordance with the Drainage Act. That is the end of my presentation. I will now leave it open for questions.
Okay, so I will go to council for questions and then we will go to the public for further questions. I'll have Deputy Mayor Fody and then I've got Councillor Maybe. Any other hands? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. You had mentioned in your presentation that not all the drain appears to be requiring to be redone. The segments that may be qualified to be redone, that only applies, or it only is applicable on the cost to the landowner of that land. Is that right? So in other words, if you're only digging 2 or 3 segments on 2 or 3 different landowners' properties, anybody else that's on that drain wouldn't be assessed a bill. Am I understanding that right?
So assessments would go to the property where the work is completed and to any property upstream of that and be split equally by the assessment schedule.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you.
So I have Councillor Maybe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. One of the things that happened very first time I was sitting in the seat is about this drainage issue in the Smith Bulger drain. And one of my first questions when I started seeing this is why it wasn't part of that initial go at the drain when it was repaired back then in that area, because there was assessment costs put to the properties in the area. And to that fact, one of my bigger questions is that that posed a big headache is that there was demand payment within 30 days at Christmas time, and in some cases, thousands and thousands of dollars. I want to see this council do something different than that. There is going to be some large costs, like there's $7,000 and $8,000 in some of these plans that I've seen. And at Christmas time, and again, there's other time and factors that there's hardships on a lot of people who are out in the community, and a large demand bill has to be looked at a little differently. Certainly, there was one person who had under $1. I don't-
Councillor Maybe, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there is no expectation of demand payment within 30 days. That was changed. There is a bylaw in place in regards to how it is added to the tax bill and it is payable over 10 years at a certain rate of interest. So I realized
Yeah.
there was a great mix up
Yep.
at that time, but I just want to be clear to those here tonight that there is not an expectation of demand payment of within 30 days of that bill.
Yeah, and that was because of that particular time frame that actually happened. So yes.
I just,
Thank you.
I didn't want you to go too
Yep,
far down
yep.
there and have
No,
people panic.
No,
So
no, because that is a big question in a lot of people's minds of large bills coming to them at the wrong time of year and having it looked after. So thank you for the clarification, and I'll leave it at that. Thank
other comments or questions from council members? I'll go back to Deputy Mayor Fode. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you again. How are you determining what segments need to be redone? Is it a depth reading, like you're taking a transit in there, for instance, and using depth gauges in the ditches that are dug now?
So we surveyed the drain in 2018. However, it is your township drainage superintendent's job to also survey the drain going forward. We've identified that work should be done in most of the areas. However, it was recently completed in 2018, and I know there is a concern for work going forward. Typically, a drain would be maintained every 10 years would be the minimum, so they do have a few years before they would necessarily need to start doing maintenance. And there was nothing that we observed that specifically would be a major impediment, but we did observe work that was required. And going forward, it would be the township drainage superintendent's responsibility to determine what work was required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so before I go to the public, last call to the council for questions for the consultant. Okay, so in regards to the Pulvert Webster drain, I only have Chris Smith on the list to speak to this. So Chris, if you'd like to make any comments, the consultant will step back and you'll have to come to the podium.
Hi, how are you? I guess I got a few questions actually. Specifically, I'd like to know what are the
I need you to speak into the microphone because nobody can hear
Sure.
at home.
specifically what are the improvements to the current report as we see it now versus the existing one on the Polar Webster Drain? I'm only talking because I literally my property.
I can't hear you
Yeah.
because you're not at the.
I'm only asking that because my property pretty well encompasses that entire drain, so I'm pretty familiar with the flows and, 12 months of the year, so I can.
So the question is, what parts of the drain need to be?
No. And what improvements does this new report have over and above the existing engineer's report? I think there's one done in 2011 for Gura Galway. So I just wonder what was the base, why do we need an engineer's report? Because
I think it was every 10 years that you said that this should be addressed or looked
you just
at.
do it because actually the drain works, I see it 12 months of the year, almost every day of the week and all kinds of weather, spring, summer. And I'm not sure, since they did the downstream improvement, I don't see that there'd be anything they could do right now that would actually improve it. Because it's basically flat on the top, flat on the bottom. And it's, I just don't know what you do. And it's so, the bottom part of on the north half of lot 15 is so in heavy rains, there's nothing you could do to accommodate the capacity there because the water's, I don't know if anybody's driven by there, but it's like a lake, right? I mean, you could put in a 15-foot culvert and it wouldn't make any difference.
Mhm.
So I'm just throwing this stuff out because I'm not sure if you guys look at it in different.
We'll let the consultant answer. Go ahead.
So specific, I just wonder specifically what improvements would happen to it. Oh, based over and above what's there now.
So maintenance itself is typically due every 10 years or so, as I said.
But I'm thinking of the report. Why do we
So the report is making recommendations for the improvements, so the cleanouts that is required.
yeah, but I mean, the ditch doesn't change. You're going to clean it out based on the grade that's there. So my question is, how is that report any different than what's there? Like, I'm sure the grades haven't changed.
Well, if
Why do we need to spend $85,000? That's kind of my point.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Consultant.
Well, maintenance itself is due every 10 years. This report is from, I don't have my slide up, but I believe 1973. So the report itself is more than 50 years old. Often they become due. They're to outdated standards. Properties are revised and adopted, and it is council's authority and obligation to appoint an engineer to do a new report, which is what they did in 2018. The drain itself has improvements on it for, there is some erosion going on, and the capacity is a little undersized for the current conditions along the drain. So there's capacity improvements.
Whereabouts would that be?
Erosion protection that goes onto the drain, as well as culvert improvements
Where,
that are required.
specifically, what would the capacity and culvert improvements be? Where would they be, take place? On the,
They are in the report. I don't have the whole report in front of me, but if you'd like to speak to Eldon afterwards, he'd be happy.
I only throw that out because I see the thing and I don't see on the top end, there's never a capacity problem.
Yeah.
That ditch is, it's 12 feet deep, and on the bottom end, there's, it overflows the ditch.
I would say most specifically that the side slopes from the original one were, I believe, 0.5 to 1, where the common newer standard is 2 to 1 for erosion protection. So a lot of it is side slopes and erosion protection. That would be the standard. But if you'd like to know exactly which culverts are being improved and what the original size was and what the proposed size is, those are in the report itself. But Eldon, sitting just behind you there, would be happy to go through them in more specific detail.
So basically, bank. Okay. The amount of water that comes through some of those places, it wouldn't matter what, what grade you had on the bank. What helps it is if you keep the banks grassed and so on, that's just my observation. But so what's the real cost benefit then to the landowner for this engineered report?
The cost benefit?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, like for me, I look at it, works fine. So for $85,000, what, just for the engineer's report, where's the cost,
So we have a requirement, as he said, that we had to update this based on the rules and regulations from OMAFRA. Is that correct? Is that my
so
understanding?
we have to have a new engineer's report every 10 years? That's
No,
mandated?
because the last one was done in the 50 years ago
There's no set standard, but it is within your
It's thought,
obligation and responsibility to ensure that the report is maintained
and up to date.
and up to date.
so it sounds like me, it's more to do with some clerical stuff, picking up new assessments and so on, than it is to actually do with the drain itself. I mean, to become current, I mean, as opposed to, that's a true answer?
Director
Question?
Holiday can answer that.
Sorry, through your worship. So the purpose of this report is to update the assessments. It's also to bring the ditch itself up to the current standard. So the standard that the original ditch would have fallen under, I think, was
76.
The standard though, that like when it was constructed would have been. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
the-
forget about what the report says. I mean, just
Yeah, yeah.
walk out and look at.
So now the engineering requirements are to adhere
Yeah.
to the existing standards. And the existing standards have been updated as of 1990.
Okay, I just don't see what you would do to it the way it is now, today, after the last maintenance, what you would do to it that would improve the flow or the capacity. I mean,
Well,
mean,
it's in terms of the cross section of the ditch as well too, there is a requirement for, like Lauren was saying, instead of being 0.5 to 1 slope, so
Mhm.
it's almost vertical. Now it's 2 to 1. So it makes it easier to maintain, less erosion. The willow staking helps with that erosion as well too. It's addressing all of those requirements. That's the purpose of
Okay.
that.
Okay, well, I guess I exhausted that one. In the last go around, I'm not, but when you guys put these things out for tender, it was costed out on a linear foot, I'm pretty sure, well, I'm not sure how you requested a tender, but I think it was 500,000 or something, but it was a lump sum. But it was allocated to, the costs based on I think it was on a linear foot. We got assessed based on a linear foot as opposed to dollars per hour. Where I'm coming from, that particular ditch, I had it cleaned out at least twice. And the last time, just 2 years prior to the big 2018. Okay, and so there wasn't 6 inches of 4 inches of sediment in the ditch when you guys, we did the 2018 maintenance, but I got billed the same as if somebody had 15 feet of material taken out. Okay, you know where I'm coming from?
I
You-
think
you-
I think I understand, but do you,
We talked a bit about it. I mean, and
so I'll let the consultant answer that.
you need to bid the jobs on a dollar per hour basis. So, when the guy's working on my land, it's only got.
But not just the landowner gets billed. Anybody who's
No, no,
putting
no.
water into it from upstream.
No, I
also
get
gets
that
billed.
part. The assessment calculation's the same. You plug a number in and it populates everybody's, piece of the pie. But what I'm talking about, when you're calculating the amount of cost or dollars for a particular length of ditch, right? I mean, that has to be on a dollars per hour basis, not on a linear foot basis, because if the guy's whizzing along on the excavator like he was, does the whole thing in a couple hours, but it's a huge linear footage. Do you know where I'm coming from?
I think so. I'm gonna
I mean,
ask
it's
the
big because
consultant.
it cost me $16,000 and there was nothing, there's no material taken
Okay,
because I had
I'm-
already done it.
I'll let the consultant answer that. Go
I
ahead.
made the argument and nobody just went on deaf ears.
I just need you to let the consultant answer, please.
All
Thank
right.
you. Go ahead.
So while it is typical for maintenance to be done on a per meter prices, we've actually measured quantities and defined things in the report, and our recommendation would be that, and it's more typical for a full report, a new report, and more fulsome improvements that they're actually done on unit prices. So by the cubic meter.
And the hourly rate?
Not an hourly rate. So by a
that's
cubic
okay.
meter of excavation, so it's already a measured quantity and each quantity is measured.
Yeah, that's
and
okay. That'll
it's
work.
charged against the section of the drain where the work is completed in. There's different maintenance sections, which improves the costing, so it ensures that he's not paying for things that are done upstream of him, and that he's actually paying for the
That'll
work
work.
that's done in
Okay.
his section.
Thank you for
So
the
how do-
clarity.
How do you keep track of the cubic meters that it's coming out just by truck load, I guess,
Right.
I mean, how do you measure how much material is taken out? In order to charge?
They're calculated in advance, and I would recommend calculating, if it's going to be a period of time before they're done again, I would recommend calculating them in advance before it's done, but
But how do you calculate how much material is taken out?
so the volume of the shape of the drain
Oh,
as it is versus the volume of the drain of the shape that it's supposed to be subtracted from that volume,
it's just
gives
a
the volume that's going to be transported offsite.
a calculation.
Yeah, and it is different than truckload. I know a lot of
Yeah.
contractors would be
Why wouldn't you
preferred.
use dollars per hour? Well, that's bang on, right?
So I'm gonna go to the director and we may have to take this conversation offline because there's probably other people who have questions about this as well.
Good enough. Anyways,
Go
I mean-
ahead,
I mean,
Director Holiday.
I can answer this one. So typically when you're doing work like this out in the field and you're digging ditches, you have a cross section. So you have your area and then you know the depth that you excavate. So you're out on site and you're shooting your grades and you're taking your measurements and you get a sense of how much material is actually being excavated there.
Mhm.
You know, when you count truckloads, there's freeboard that you could lose. There are all kinds of things. You know, the material is different when it's in the truck than it is in situ. So you take your shots and you establish what the quantity of material is being removed. You know, you shoot the grades. Is it confirmed with the grades of the ditch, what it should be?
Yeah, I get it.
And that's how you
No,
move,
I understand. I totally
up
get
the
it.
chain.
I understand. it.
and you get your cubic meterage by that.
I understand.
Okay.
But that may or may not be what the true cost is, right? Of the excavator, of the main, It's a
Okay.
guess at best. Okay,
So do you have many more questions? Because there was to be a 5-minute time limit. And if you have further questions, we could
think I-
probably
yeah,
take
yeah.
this offline.
covered that. I don't agree with it, but. Okay, no, so from what, From out of this, I gather that the biggest improvement is the change in the grade on the
The
banks.
slopes. Okay.
Could we not do that without a new engineer's report?
No, because the engineer's report requires that for slope stability as well as shaping to make sure that the erosion, I'm assuming that's why the engineer's report is required.
The old report doesn't speak to erosion?
Pardon?
The old existing report doesn't speak to erosion?
Not to the same standards, because these standards are from 1990
To
and not the ones that were used in 1976.
So all you can legally do is put under the 1976 report is put the drain back to the way it was in 1976. You can't make any improvements. You can't change the side slopes. So if the side slopes were 0.5 to 1 and you'd like them to be 2 to 1, you need a new engineer's report to do that. If you want to put rock protection or erosion control, you need a new engineer's report to do
So
that.
in places where they're highly, like that ditch is really subject to erosion big time, like huge. And so how, it wouldn't matter what, as I said before, 2 to 1, 1 to 1, it won't matter what you do. So I envision you'd have to put all kinds of rock, you'd have to, there'd be large parts of the ditch would require, especially on the corners, tons and tons of, rock gabions and stuff. Is that what you would be doing?
Yes.
Really? And even on some of the straight paths, it would require, to eliminate the erosion, you'd have to, you'd almost have to gabion
Yeah.
the whole ditch.
Typically it's only required on bends, and then the 2 to 1 side slopes help the erosion protection on the straight section, as well as proper grassing and vegetation and the willow staking and a few other things that are identified along there for straight sections, along with the reduced velocity that comes from the sediment controls and from the erosion protection that is on the other corners. So
And then the beaver dam prevention, is that in the report?
they would become maintenance as well,
Just part of the regular maintenance, okay?
part of regular maintenance.
Because there's a big one in it right now, so.
It's part of the maintenance and the upkeep. Okay. So is there anyone else that would like to speak to the Boulevard Webster drain? That is the motion that is on the floor currently. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I have a question. What triggers a municipal drain modernization? Does the engineer call that shot? Do the landowners get the
Township.
township makes that decision?
It was started back in May of 2018 in the previous council.
Right. The request was made. I realize that. But ultimately, it's the council here that decides whether that drain is done in whole or in part.
So the motion that's on the floor right now is to accept the engineer's report as
Right.
it's prepared. But as far as going forward, I believe that's part of the court of revision. And then before anything gets done to move forward with it. Is that correct, Director?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Which includes input from landowners.
correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions in regards to the Boulevard Webster drain? Okay, seeing none and no further comments or questions from council members. If not, I will call the question that is on the floor, moved by Deputy Mayor Fode, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the committee of the whole recommend that council accept the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultants, Inc., entitled Engineer's Report for the Modification and Improvement of the Boulevard Webster Municipal Drain, dated May 2024, and that the staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration to give first and second reading of the bylaw in accordance to sections 42 and 45 of the current Drainage Act RSO 1990 CD 17. So this does not finalize anything because we have to have third reading. That's why there's only first and second. And we're not, sorry,
Just for clarification.
this is staff to be directed to.
A bylaw will be brought forward to a subsequent meeting. At that meeting, council will be asked to give first and second reading. What that does is creates a bylaw that's called a provisional bylaw, which then starts the process with the Court of Revision.
So the court of revision process doesn't start until we move the first and second reading. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Through you, what timeline processes are we looking at? Is there generalizations of 2 months, 6 months?
I think I'll go to the director and the consultants and maybe their estimated timelines.
Following first and second reading by council, which I would anticipate would occur within a month, it's normally a 30-day time frame for the first sitting of the quarter revision. There's also an appeal process that runs for 40 days from the notice that goes out to the landowners for a tribunal hearing. If there were an appeal to the tribunal, they set their own schedule, so that could come up to a year later. But the general time frame would be 2 months for the quarter revision, and then you could go to third reading and you could go to tendering after that. However, if you were to actually do construction, most of that is in water timing window. Timing windows are limited, so you can actually only do construction work between July and October. So if you did first and second reading now, you couldn't do actual work on the drain until next July.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just to play devil's advocate here in this room, what if we said we're not interested in pursuing this whatsoever? You know, there's your drain. If there's an issue, work it out. Rather than us initiating this. What's the answer to the?
Go ahead.
The work was initiated by the previous council, so there's $85,000 of engineering spent. If you don't do any work, it reverts back to the 1976 bylaw, and eventually it becomes outdated and you have to do this work again. But the cost to date would have to be paid by somebody. I would assume that would be council if you didn't want to proceed with anything at this point.
So it would not be levied. Well, I guess that would be up to how we handled it going forward, but
Straying into legal advice that I can't.
yes,
give you.
fair. Because there's a legal obligation under the Municipal Act or the Municipal Drain Act, that we have an obligation as a municipality to do certain things within certain timeframes, correct? Okay. I haven't read the entire Drainage Act. It's not on my bedside table. It's not my nighttime reading. So again, by accepting this report, we are accepting the information, and then the bylaw would be coming for council's consideration in the future to give first and second reading, in which case we can debate whether we move forward with things or not. Okay. So motion is on the floor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? No, I've got a motion on the floor and I just called the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Is there something else you'd like to say, Mr. Smith? Yeah, we can't hear you. We need, and the people at home can't hear you.
Said, you know, the reason we need to move forward is because the township has an obligation, you know, to meet certain standards and so on. A few minutes ago, we asked if it was obligatory, and you said it wasn't mandatory, obligatory. So
Can
you
you
know,
clarify that, Mr. Gonzalez?
it's thought to be a good thing to do, but there's no legal component to it,
Go ahead.
right? That's what you said about 20 minutes ago.
So for the municipality, the drain itself, to do any work on it, must look exactly like it did in 1976. It must have exactly the same profile. It must have exactly the same side slopes. It must have exactly the same properties with no severances or additions to the property. So where council is obliged to commence the procedure for a new report is when the properties no longer look like that, when there's been severances or subdivisions that haven't been properly accommodated under the Drainage Act. You can't make an assessment if you go to do work on maintenance if the properties don't look like they did in 1976.
In the last 30 years, there hasn't been any severance or subdivisions in your zone.
I would suspect that there was.
There absolutely has been.
And
There absolutely has been. The property right beside you. The house was severed off the land.
and as well, if the drain itself doesn't.
Oh, you
look-
mean the one that's out on the hill?
Anyway, sorry.
If the drain itself is meandered or if there's a different alignment than it had in nineteen
But that stuff
seventy-six,
doesn't
where
affect
you
the
get to
drainage.
the part where it is no longer in the same spot where it was in 1976, you're not technically able to maintain that. So you're obliged to do a new report to accommodate all the current alignment, the current properties, the current standards. You're obliged to do a report at some point in the future,
I've been
whether
there,
it's now or
I've been there 30 years and there hasn't been any, that property you're talking
Okay.
about hasn't changed a bit.
So I'm gonna turn it over to the CA.
Thank you. I was just going to indicate that if there are additional questions that you have regarding this, given that the public portion of the meeting has been closed, if you could submit them in writing, they can be addressed in the report that
All
comes
right.
back to council.
But,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 6.2 Engineers Report for Modification and Improvement of the Creek Road Municipal Drain. And that is moved by Counselor Maybe, seconded by Counselor Jameson. That the Committee of the Whole recommends that council receive this report regarding the role, or no, sorry. I'm missing there it is, sorry, my apologies. This motion is moved by Deputy Mayor Fode, seconded by Counselor Maybe, that the Committee of the Whole recommend that council accept the engineer's report prepared by Robinson Consultants entitled Engineer's Report for the Modification and Improvement of the Creek Road Municipal Drain dated May 2024, and that staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration to give first and second reading of the bylaw in accordance with sections 42 and 45 of the current Drainage Act RSO 1990 CD 17. So the motion is on the floor, and Mr. Consultant, I know that you gave us the background in the previous as far as how things are delineated. Is there anything additional you want to add for this particular drain?
I do have a presentation and I'd like to step through it, but
Please.
when I get to slides that do obviously repeat
already
the same
seen.
information, I'll point that out and just move on.
Thank you.
So this meeting then is for the Creek Road Municipal Drain. And as I said, a number of these slides will probably repeat, so I'm just going to skip over a number of them. And I may lose my voice because I don't usually do two presentations in one night, but. So this is the drainage area of the Creek Road Municipal Drain. This one is slightly different as it has a number of different branches, branch A through F, as well as a tile header municipal drain that is part of the municipal drain. It is in the Douce-Lemaine Road area, bounded by a unopened road allowance to the south and Russell Road to the west. It includes a number of the properties that are all owned by one owner across the bottom here, but with contributing area from many areas, many properties upstream, as well as the one or two additional properties here to the east. The Creek Road Municipal Drain was originally constructed in 1982 under a report prepared by A.J. Graham, dated March 12th, 1982. And it's the current, the 1982 report and bylaw are the current governing ones for this drain. So it is a number of years old as well. Maintenance of the Creek Road Municipal Drain was last completed in 2016, 2017, where a full clean out of all existing branches was performed. Robinson Consultants was appointed on March 12th of 2018. The appointment was under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and the on-site meeting was held May 15th of 2018. Modifications for the existing Creek Road Municipal Drain include improved drainage capacity for lands and roads and a fair and equitable distribution of costs for future maintenance. The typical items, again, are replacement of specific culverts, reestablishment of a smooth profile, periodic rock and check dam and sediment basins, as well as seeding and some willow staking again on branch A required by the DFO. This is a general slide on the Drainage Act and the different sections of the act, which we've gone over in the previous presentation. And benefit, again, with definition under the Drainage Act. And that lands on each side that are directly adjacent to the drains are those ones charged for benefit. Outlet and its definition under the Drainage Act. And all properties within the drainage basin pay for a portion of the costs. Special assessments and special benefits. The cost estimate, and again, that due to the recent maintenance, it's not anticipated that the current proposed maintenance or construction is immediately required and may be completed in phases or scheduled as required. As such, the schedules shown in the engineer's report only show the report for, or the cost for engineering. Again, the engineering for this one is estimated at $85,000 with $1,496 of net HST. The different factors that apply to assessments and how they're calculated, including the agricultural drainage infrastructure grant, which I did caution on the last one, may only be applied where some work is actually completed. The report alone would not be eligible for a grant unless work is completed. The general description of the land use factor and how it's calculated, the general description of the distance factor and how it's calculated. The distance factors from each of the branches, a little more complicated on this one based on the number of branches. And that a number of the branches don't have land that exceeds more than 200 meters away from each branch. This one was divided into 7 sections, basically 1 section for each branch. And the majority of properties are all assigned a factor of 1 because they're upstream. It's only the properties where the branch are that are assigned different factors. The ADIP grant eligibility and the definition of farm tax class. Allowances that are only paid where construction is completed and the allowance is actually incurred. The slide for a quarter revision and how one might appeal their assessment following this. The requirements for construction or maintenance for the future, and open to questions.
So the motion is on the floor. So questions from council, and then we'll go to the public. Go ahead, Councillor Grau.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. Oftentimes with public works, there are change orders available. So just in very broad terms, if we accept the engineering report, and as we were proceeding with work RFPs over a period of time, do we have to, is the township obligated to follow what the engineering report has specifically, or can change orders, or that's the word I'm using here, can changes be made at some time, or would it require going back to the engineering firms? In other words, is there any wiggle room as this proceeds over the next 5 years or whatever, using the term change orders? Thank you.
So the report itself, if it's not adopted, goes back to 1982. We were given a mandate to produce a new report. The costs that have been incurred to date are there. I'm not sure how they would be charged out if you decided to, at this point, to set out a different mandate and make a new report, which would basically start the process over again. There would have to be a new meeting to consider potentially, based on the new requirements that were set out in the mandate. And there would be there'd be some things that could be brought in from the previous one, but there would be a lot of potential new costs to consider a new option at this point.
And then just one final question. As work is done over a period of time, who is responsible for seeing that that work meets this engineering report? Would the engineers come back and say, we sign off on it? Or would our drainage superintendent at the township level sign off on it? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Under the Drainage Act, there are obligations for the drainage engineer to inspect construction, but if it were done over an extended period of time, that might not be viable. The Drainage Act does allow for the drainage superintendent to sign off on that.
Thank you for the question. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. You had made a statement in the previous drain that we just discussed. I would like to hear those words again. You said no changes can be made to the original drain. That segment of conversation you had. Can you repeat that? No changes
The engineering. I
to the
think.
engineering. Like, in other words, you couldn't add to the drain, you couldn't reroute. Is that true?
Go ahead.
The original report has a bylaw that's associated with it, and you must stick to that bylaw until such time as a new bylaw is in place for that drain. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but
Okay, that constitutes another question. Who would establish a new bylaw?
We would.
Council?
We would.
council sets out a mandate, appoints an engineer as they did in 2018. That engineer writes a new report, listens to all the landowners and the any direction that came from council, although council is an administrator of the report, so they don't directly direct an engineer because it's actually owned, the drain itself is owned by all the property owners, not council. It's called a municipal drain, but it isn't really. It's you have certain obligations as a council under the act to do certain tasks, but it's not your drain, so you don't have a right to necessarily direct the engineer in any way. You can offer things and the engineer would take them under consideration just as they do at the on-site meeting. And then the engineer goes forth, sets out a report. It's up to council to accept that report or not accept it and to move on to bylaw. And when it becomes a bylaw, that report is now the governing bylaw and works going into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? I've got no hands up, so I'm gonna go to the list of speakers, just reiterating the 5-minute maximum so that we can get through. There are a few speakers here. So I have George Horton and then Richard Davis and then Al Whitlam.
Set me up. My report may be somewhat longer than 5 minutes, but only about 10 minutes, and Linda has offered to give me her time if it runs over.
Okay. I ask you to keep it fairly tight just because we do
It's
have
only
other
about 10 minutes
speakers.
long, about 7 minutes long. All I need is the map. Okay. Your worship, council members, staff, assemblage. You can tell I'm a singer. So just. Okay. I want to make one comment before my presentation, is you had mentioned about the header for the drain, for the tile, the pump. That's not under the municipal drain. That was never put in with you people. Do you want to answer that question first, or do you want me to go through my presentation first?
According to the 1982 report, it did form part of the municipal drain.
That's not the way I ever read it, but anyway, we'll see about that later. So this is my presentation of the township for the Creek Road drain. The Creek Road drain has two issues that we would like to see implemented from discussions during this meeting tonight. Number one, a reevaluation of the process to trigger a clean out. Number two, as per the council's director, the engineering firm is hereby instructed to modify the drain design to accommodate the installed tile drainage system. Additionally, they be tasked with exploring more efficient and cost-effective methods for conveying water from the catchment area to the Smith Bolger drain and reverting the catchment area back to the original plan. We met with the engineers and township staff in November of 2023 after the cleanout was presented to council. It was determined that an engineering report could be completed to provide plans to re-engineer the Creek Road drain and establish a schedule for the future. We were given assurances that we, as the landowners, would be responsible for triggering the cleanout, and the council would only act on behalf of the people in good faith. An on-site meeting was held May 15th, 2018 to discuss the project and provide consultation as required under the Ontario Drainage Act. However, it appears that none of the property owners were invited to that meeting, and I most certainly don't have any record of that invitation. In reference to Section 78 of the Ontario Drainage Act, Lauren shared that the current drains are adequately moving water through the property and therefore do not require a cleanout at this time. A cleanout was previously performed in 2016, and it is recommended to avoid premature cleaning to minimize environmental disturbances. Although you did deal with that before, saying that that it doesn't have to be done at this point. It should be noted that upon examining the map, which is up there, there has been an adjustment to the catchment area, now including Lot 7, situated west of Branch F. You can see it, that's actually owned by Polarworks at this point. It's important to note that the water flow from that specific area is directed westward and therefore should not be part of the current drain in question. And if you look at the catchment area, north of Polarworks Farm, Lot 7, everything's going north. There's very little water coming into that catchment area. So I'm not sure just why that is even included in this. It was not included in the original plan. And as far as Branch F goes, there's so little water coming down through right now. It's a very small trickle. I see it all the time. The reasons, so let's go over the reasons not to clean the drain out prematurely. From an ecological standpoint, it is preferable to minimize disruptions to the drain. Environmentalists seek to decelerate water's movement, and existing drains were established grass aid in achieving this by slowing down the water flow. Premature cleaning would lead to an increase in silt runoff into the waterways. Presently, the runoff from the hill flows into Smith Bolger drain without any backup into the drainage basin. The sole observed backup occurs due to silt accumulation where Wiltsey Creek meets the Gananoque River. It may be more appropriate to address this issue before contemplating any drain modifications. From a financial standpoint, the drain was last cleaned in 2016, 2017, and many landowners are still paying for that service. It's estimated that the cost of cleaning it would be more than double the previous one, resulting in a negative potential if the project proceeds. When the Municipal Drainage Act was initially passed, its primary purpose was to provide farmers with legal protection ensuring the drainage to their land. However, bureaucratic processes have taken precedence, effectively sidelining farmers from the decision-making process. Neither the necessity of the drain cleaning nor the associated costs, which directly impact landowners, are adequately addressed or discussed with the affected parties. It is imperative that we examine the procedure for initiating a cleanout. There are multiple avenues through which a cleanout may be triggered. It appears that this township employs a specific cleanout schedule. I anticipate that very few landowners concur with this methodology. It would be interesting to ascertain the number of signatures on this or any other petitions. One of the recommendations that should emerge from tonight's meeting is a shift away from this strategy towards a collaborative approach between the road superintendent and the landowners to lay out a needs-based approach to drainage maintenance. The landowners are intimately familiar with their drains and can discern when their fields are experiencing flooding. It is essential that we are consulted prior to the initiation of a cleanout. And it should be noted that other municipalities take this approach. And just to go back to this the bylaw, where you guys are over a barrel, because as soon as you initiate that, you have to pass the bylaw. You're in for 86,000 on the Boulevard Webster, another 86,000 on mine. You're also in for a lot of money from the Smith Bolger. So you have no choice except to accept this bylaw. The second item we want to address this evening is the alternate proposal for a modification and improvement of the Creek Road municipal drain. The Creek Road drain was initially commissioned and excavated in 1982. The ditches were originally ward ditches that were later converted to municipal drainage. When they were ward ditches, the ditches were dug by hand, making them shallow and requiring placement on the lot lines to accommodate furrows that carried water off the fields. The ditches effectively moved water off the hill and rainwater from fields to Welty Creek. Since then, the land has undergone systematic tiling, resulting in ditches currently only carrying runoff water from the hill, while rainwater is diverted to the system. As per the report, the proposed drain's purpose is to provide sufficient drainage and adequate outlet for surface and subsurface tile drainage for the lands and roads within the drainage area through modifications and improvements. There have been minimal modifications in the drains since 1982, which you alluded to. Jim Kent, an engineer, who's going to be speaking later, I hope, is one of the affected landowners, is proposing an alternate drainage plan. We forwarded an alternate plan of the drainage to the drainage superintendent, council, and engineers recently. The response from the engineering firm was, as you pointed out earlier, note that our mandate from the municipality as appointed under section 78 was only to review, update, and incorporate existing drains under the new report. Consideration of alternate routing would require a new mandate from council, which you've covered with the other drain. Since 1982, the drain basin has been tiled systematically. The only water in the ditches is from the catchment area. The surface water in the basin goes through the tiles. We have circulated an alternative solution that eliminates 4 of the ditches. Environmentally, it makes sense, as less the soil is disturbed, the less silt moves downstream. The cost would be significantly reduced for the landowners. There are only 150 acres of land. Cleaning this drain this frequently and with this many ditches makes the land unprofitable. As the major contributor to this drain, I cannot afford to farm the land when faced with unnecessary cleanouts and an outdated system that is excessive for moving water. The alternate drain would dramatically reduce the cost to everyone. Now is the time for council to receive this report, reevaluate its priorities, and have the engineers present an alternative that addresses the drain's current requirements. My research indicates the grant should still be available to cover the upgrades. The engineers have already done a lot of the field work, checked elevations, water flows, etc. So they should already be available. As I mentioned, the water is moving adequately through the drains and a clean out is not necessary at this time. Let's get this drain right before we dig. Let's measure twice and dig once. In the event that council decides to proceed with a reevaluation of the drains, we would appreciate a detailed outline of the process that will be followed. I think you've already mentioned you're going to do that. We took a picture of it. As the ones responsible for most of the funding of these ditches, we would like to closely monitor each step. So in conclusion, we would like to recommend, as I said before, the council address the following 2 items: a reevaluation for the process to trigger a drain clean out. Very few municipalities are going with this route. In fact, the people that I talk to on other places say it's the other way. They aren't getting cleaned out enough and they can't convince council to clean them out. So I think we need something in the middle that it's killing us. Anyone on the lower end of these drains, we're going to be out of business at some point if council proceeds with the way they're going. As per the council's directive, the engineering firm be instructed to modify the drain design to accommodate the installed tile drainage system. Additionally, they be tasked with exploring more efficient and cost-effective methods for conveying water for the catchment area to the Smith Bolger drain, reverting the catchment area back to the original plan. I also like to know when that will be decided and the results sent out to us. I'd like to thank you for your consideration of our issues and concerns. Oh, everything's coming apart.
Thank you. So, Mr. Consultant, is there anything that you would like to address out of his presentation?
Many of the items I probably can't, like there's a process to trigger cleanouts and stuff, that's a municipal process. It's not for me to comment on. I do note that there was concern expressed with one area of the drainage area, and I would like to say that those types of concerns are addressed at the quarter revision, so they happen after this. If you believe that the drainage area is incorrect and it should be corrected, you make an appeal at the quarter revision. We review it more thoroughly. In this case, we'd probably come out to the site with you. We'd review it. You'd take it to the quarter revision. If we agree with you, which is quite possible, I mean, we look at the drainage area as a whole, not necessarily very detailed specific areas. So we may agree with you, and we would present that to the quarter revision that we agree with you, and it would be up to them to decide whether to make that change and have that adjustment made.
So where is the quarter revision? Is that here or is that in Toronto, or where would we deal with that?
It is here. It is three members that are appointed by council to sit independently on what's called the quarter revision. It has a very specific process under the act and appeals that they can hear. But the council would appoint 3 members to the quarter revision. They would hear those appeals and make that decision.
Are they farmers? Are they environmentalists, or what? Or do you know the criteria?
Technically, they can be any member of the municipality that is eligible to sit on council. So they can be current sitting councillors. I personally don't recommend that the ward councillor or whatever you call them here are for the area where Creek Road Municipal Drain sits on that quarter revision, because it's not meant to be politically motivated. They are independent. But there's no rules that say that he specifically can't. It can also, council at their discretion can appoint different members of council. So I have seen ones that are run very well. Typically they have the mayor or one member of council as the chair, but then they have a farmer and a business person not associated with the drain, again, is the recommendation. So somebody from outside of the area, but familiar with farming practices, is a good one to have sit on a council. And also a business person or somebody from the area that's familiar with business and taxes and calculations and that sort of thing is a good recommendation.
It kind of
But
makes,
typically they're all council members.
right. It kind of makes sense to have this set up before we get to this point, because let's face it, council's over a barrel right now. They have to move forward with this,
The
Clean it.
appointments to the quarter revision come after first and second.
No, I realize that's what you're saying, but I'm just saying, I think the system is not right. As far, the last thing I'd like to bring up is, as I mentioned in my report, what about setting a new mandate for another drain? Is that possible? Because the people I've talked to said that there is money available. You can still get the 3rd grant, and it's just added on to the grant that you have, and it should be possible.
So council themselves for an existing drain can appoint an engineer under section 78. That doesn't allow them to extend the drain upstream. So depending on the nature of the improvements you're proposing, it may require an actual new petition to extend the drain upstream, because it's not within council's mandate to do.
Well, I'm not talking upstream. I'm talking about the branches, the 5 branches that we
So-
have now.
The way I understand it, I'll go to the director and he can be more concise on that.
Thank you. I think what George is asking is alterations to the existing drain, what you proposed on your map.
Yes.
What are the next steps for consideration of that alteration to the drain?
Mhm.
And I think that's the question that he's asking, and that would be the tribunal, correct?
The quarter revision or the tribunal?
So the next steps, as far as the report right now, is at this meeting, the report is accepted. At an upcoming council meeting, the recommendation, I believe, of this committee is sent to council. And they get to choose whether to give the report and the bylaw first and second reading. First and second reading then triggers the quarter revision process. So at the meeting where they're setting the bylaw, they will appoint members to be on the quarter revision, and they will set a quarter revision date, and you will get a notice in the mail of the quarter revision and how you can make an appeal if you'd like to. And it will also outline that you have the option to appeal to the drainage tribunal. So the quarter revision is for assessments. If you believe that alterations to the drain should occur and council didn't accept that, you can appeal to the tribunal that you believe the alterations should occur.
Yeah.
And they could direct a new process. So-
Except my question was, is the third grant available if to cover changes? That was my question.
Wouldn't it be all included in the engineering costs and submitted to OMAFRA? I guess that would be a question. we'd have
Depending
to
on
ask.
how they were addressed, and it would be up to OMAFRA to decide whether work that was done on something else, and then depending on how much the mandate is changed, it would be all up to OMAFRA to decide whether they believe that that work was viable and brought forward and should be something they should pay a grant on, or whether they would not pay a grant on that portion, but they would pay a grant on the new portion. Some portion of it there would be a grant available for, but I cannot clearly state.
So it could be a
What
risk
OMAFRA's
that
policy
the
would be.
property owner would have to take the risk of knowing, the property owners on that particular drain would have to take the risk if there was engineering to be redone to change, say, for example, this suggested change. So there is some work that's been done likely on the engineering of the drain as it sits that can be utilized, but if we're changing what the drain is, then it requires a bylaw from council, correct? And it would require a new engineering report.
Yes.
Okay, just for simplicity.
Right.
And in doing so, there's no guarantees that OMAFRA would cover the first engineering reports because that isn't the work that we would end up doing if we change the drain, correct? Okay, just wanted to
Yeah.
be clear.
That is
Go ahead.
my interpretation, although it strays into legal advice, which I should not be.
We don't take
Well,
legal
yeah.
advice, it's process.
Yeah, no, I think that, as you say, this is more of a legal question than a question for council or the engineer. I think this is a legal question that we would have to look into before we decided to move forward.
Go ahead, Director.
All of the environmental approvals are based on the existing drain as well. So all those approvals would have to be considered.
When you say environmental, you're talking about CRCA and
EFO, yeah, all of those would have to be
redone.
reapplied for and approved.
And that's all part of the engineering report
Would
that
be.
has been provided.
Correct.
Which brings up another question that always seems to affect farmers is why are we paying the whole shot and not the environmentalists? Why is Cataraqui Conservation, some of the, or Ducks Unlimited, some of these other organizations that want to see this done? And really these sloping of banks is for them, not for us. Why are they not on the hook for some of this money? For the cost of
That is a very good question, but one that I don't think any of us have an answer to. Deputy Mayor Fode, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to George or Mr. Horton. Was any of your land tiled when this municipal drain was originally installed?
No, it wasn't.
Right.
It was
So-
tiled. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt. I think your presentation has merit for the simple reason I've lived in that same vicinity for exactly the same number of years you have. And I've seen from my own eyes, I agree with what you're saying. Some of those ditches carry little or no water. They were originally intended, as you say, for road runoff and such and field runoff. Well, the field runoff doesn't take place anymore because the field tile takes care of it and sends it to your pump, which takes care of it all. Anyway, I think, the quarter revision or whatever process needs to happen. And perhaps it plays out in any drain, including the Boulevard drain and the Boulevard Webster drain. Times change. And not only that, we have members in this room tonight that are upstream from this who have done a lot of tiling and sending a lot of water downstream that didn't go there in the capacity that it does now or in the time frame. So I think the whole process as George has indicated, needs to be brought in today's world and assessed by today's needs and requirements and costs, because it doesn't matter who plays this game financially, it's going to be costly. It's going to be real costly. And I, for one, wouldn't dare want to make a move without the landowners playing a pivotal role on this. Thank you.
Okay. Further comments or questions from council?
Can I make one last comment?
Last comment, and then we'll move on to Richard Davis and then Al Whitmore.
So my last comment, and as I said in the report, I felt I wasn't involved in the process at all. And I think we should have some sort of committee of farmers that, and the roads commissioner, and we look these drains over together, because we live there. It's just like Chris Smith said, we live there, man. And we know these drains. We know how the water's flowing. We know what needs to be done. It should be a landowners driven. It shouldn't be council driven.
There is a process for municipal drain abandonment.
But
If you wanted to take care of it yourself.
No,
it's,
I would be interested. I was very interested in abandonment. When I talked to some legal advice, they said, you're not going to get abandonment. Like, walk away from that
why
one.
not? It requires, I believe, so
Oh,
many.
I own the whole basin, but I was told that the township owns along the road and they wouldn't allow me to abandon. But I would be, if you guys want to abandon it,
I'm
let
not
me
saying that
abandon
we
it.
want that. I'm just saying it is an option. It
Yeah,
is
I
part
would
of
like,
municipal.
I would definitely go for that option, because I can dig that so much cheaper than the other processes. Anyway, is that?
We haven't, we're just receiving this, going to first and second reading, which would come back to council at that time. So this information that's come here tonight for both the Webster Boulevard Webster and the Creek Drain, both of them can be further discussed at first and second reading, whether we decide to move forward, but then the implications can be discussed as far as the bills for engineering and how that gets paid. Correct, Mr. Director? Yeah, so based on how I understand the process, we're receiving this report. The staff is directed to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration to give first and second reading. And at that point in time, it can be defeated, and there's further discussion that can happen between now and then. And part of the reason we haven't met with individual landowners is because all of this information needed to come out in one forum once. And we're happy to have further conversation after this meeting. But if the bylaw is prepared and comes for council consideration at first and second reading, we can further anticipate what could happen. And if abandonment is the will, that's something we'll have to look into from the municipal point of view. But regardless, the bill for the engineering still has to be paid.
Even
So-
if it's abandoned, it definitely has to be paid. Like you're on the hook. There's no money, no grant available.
Correct.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Consultant, go ahead.
I do have a few slides available to present on abandonment if you'd like to see them at this time.
Council, do you understand abandonment and what happens? Like, how long are we talking here? The only reason I say that is because it's 8 o'clock and we've only got through the two. We have other things on the council agenda. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I have one question. Is it true that abandonment requires 100% agreement from the landowners?
The slide would go through it, but in order to trigger a review of abandonment, you must have more than 75% of the owners assessed for benefit so in this case, it would be the 1982 report. So in almost all cases, that would be you, George.
I own
because
the
you
whole
own
basin, the
All
whole
the
basin,
properties that
yeah,
are assessed
yeah.
for benefit, and that is on the slides if we want to go through them. And more than 75% of the owners assessed for benefit. So if it's a few small properties that are also assessed for benefit, which in this case, I don't believe it is. So in most cases, you would probably cover the abandonment. At which point, the council does not have to automatically accept the abandonment. They can request the report of an engineer. And the report of an engineer would say whether he believed that abandonment should actually occur or whether the drain serves some function. Honestly, if I were asked to do it, I would say from a road authority perspective and from a legal outlet for the drainer owners upstream of these drains, that abandonment is not in their best interest, but we'd have to look at it independently if we were requested to do so.
That's what I heard when I talked to some experts. Sorry.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just one follow-up, if I may, just for clarity, 75% of the assessed landowners, is that the number of landowners or the assessed acreage?
He has the slides, so.
Okay.
I just 2 minutes for the slides. There's only a
Go ahead.
couple of them. So with regard to the drainage areas, this does show the drainage areas that we've considered. Branch A is A6, which is the biggest of the drainage areas. So if there is some concern with those, we'd be happy to look at them, but that's not what we were here for. So this is the slide for abandonment, and it shows section 84 of the Act. And section 84 says if 3/4 of the owners of land assessed for benefit in respect to the drainage work, so according to the last revised assessment roll, own not less than 3/4 of the lands. So you have to have 75% of the owners and 75% of the lands. You have to meet both of those triggers. Then you can request abandonment as per this section of Act, and it goes on to say how you do that. So if any owner of land sends a notice to the clerk within the 10-day period in accordance with subsection 1, the council shall appoint an engineer to examine the drainage works and report on recommendations as to the proposed abandonment. So in this case, that could be the road authority, or it could be any upstream landowner that requests that report, and then it would have to be done. And the engineer would look at it and decide, make a statement as to whether he thought it was a viable abandonment or not. And I'm honestly not sure what would happen if we said it wasn't a viable abandonment, but you still wanted to proceed with that. It'd be interesting case law, but I'm not sure it's been set yet. So if we're looking at the assessments from the 1982 report, the ones I've highlighted in pink are the ones that are assessed for benefit. So anybody with a 0 in these columns is not part of the calculation. So in this case, for property 2 in this report, for Olive Branch E, Mr. Horton would be the represent 100% of the lands and 100% of the owners assessed for benefits, as well as Branch F, the main tile header, which is in the 1982 report. He would have the ability to abandon that, or to the point where a report is requested. Branch A, Branch C, D. The only one that has a different property, and it's the one right beside Branch A on Mr. Horton, which is property number 8 as it's identified. So in that case, you would be.
Is that lot or? What do you mean, is that lot?
It is lot 5 or concession 5, lot 10, East Park.
I know that.
So in that case, you would be 50% of the owners because there are 2 of them, but you may represent, you'd have to measure the lands assessed for benefits and decide whether you make up 75% or both of you signed on.
Does land use make a difference?
No.
Okay. But this.
So nobody
Whether
can hear
you
you.
assess for benefit
because-
in the 1982 report.
Sorry, this is being broadcast, so when you're not talking into a microphone, nobody can hear you online, just so you're aware. Sorry, that's why sidebar conversations don't work well in this particular scenario. Okay, so again, what's being proposed here is receiving the information. The first and second reading, the staff would prepare a bylaw for council's consideration to give first and second reading in the future, in which case then we can go down the path of having further discussion. in regards to any different paths that might be taken. Okay. Okay, so I have other people wanting to speak to this. And I will, so we're 5 after 8. The motion is on the floor. We can't take a break until we address this. And I know that we are going to need a comfort break here shortly. I know I'm going to anyway. So Richard Davis, you're next. Go ahead.
I'll pass it to next speaker. You don't want to hear me.
Okay, I believe Karen Davis will be the speaker this evening.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat anything that George has already said, because I fully support his comments, and agree with them. I do want to just point out a couple of things specifically to council, because as Karina has already said that she has not read the Drainage Act, and I'm going to assume most of you have not read the Drainage Act and don't know it inside out. So I'm not going to say that I've read it from front to back, but I have looked at it and I've had several discussions with various people from OMAFA who know it inside out. And I think it's important that you're aware, as a comment that Mr. Foti said, times have changed. And the Drainage Act has already been taken to tribunal from various municipalities across this province. And landowners have said, maybe it's because they don't want it cleaned out. Maybe it's because they do want it cleaned out, but they've gone to the tribunal and they've argued that times have changed and the Drainage Act no longer is effective for their area specifically, whether it's because of different land functionality that they're dealing with, maybe it's environmental reasons. And the tribunal has said, you are correct. This has actually happened in municipalities in this province. You are correct. Times have changed. The Drainage Act is out of date. And there are specific reasons where we will accept your recommendations that goes against the tribunal, or sorry, goes against the Drainage Act. So a precedent has been set in this province that says we don't necessarily have to follow the Drainage Act. So I think it's important that council knows that, if you have not heard of that already, because multiple times it has been referenced that the Drainage Act states we must do this. That is not the case anymore. So let's look at each individual situation and let's not just go off of the Drainage Act being law, because that is not the case. There could be situations where we do not have to follow the Drainage Act. I also think it's important to point out that OMAFRA does not require this to happen. There's no law that says an engineering report has to be done. And that was stated earlier that, the Drainage Act states there's no law there. At the end of the day, the engineering report was done because our municipality requested it. Not the landowners, the municipality.
Not this term of council.
And yes, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying this was not required under provincial law. It was not required under the Drainage Act. It was not required by OMAFA. It was required by our municipality to spend our taxpayers' dollars to do an engineering report that our taxpayer dollars did not ask for. So let's just set that record clear from the get-go. Let's not turn it around and blame the Drainage Act, because again, that is not the case here. I am a full supporter of municipal drains. I think they benefit, as a farmer in this township, in this municipality, I think they benefit us. I have no issues with them. I have no issues with the importance of maintaining them. I think it can be agreed amongst all landowners. The issue is communication. The issue is including landowners who ultimately are paying the bill for all of this, and we're not included. As Mr. Horton has already indicated, there was a meeting scheduled for May 15th, of which there's no record by the landowners that they were invited. I am putting it out to council It is your job to find out why those landowners were not invited. If they were supposed to be there, why weren't they invited? And you should be able to go back and figure that out and let us know. Well, were we sent an email or we sent a letter and it got lost in the mail? Like, I'd like to know, why did we not get informed about that? Why was Mr. Horton, who owns 100% of that drainage basin, not invited? That's your job as council to go back and figure out what went wrong there. Communication is critical when you're expecting landowners to pay thousands of dollars for something they don't want done. So let's try and improve that. Let's try and go back to the landowners and say, you want this done or do you not want this done? Because you're the one footing the bill. If we're asking for a report to be done, why is that report being done? And who are you sitting at a desk doing the report? Like, why are we not going to our residents and saying, you own 100% of that basin. You have profitable land, or we hope profitable land, that's profitable because you have a municipal drain. If your land is profitable the way it is, why would we make a change to it and give him a bill? That's not making it more profitable. There's got to be a return on investment on a municipal drain. And if you're doing a clean out unnecessarily, there is zero return on investment for that. So I think that's about all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker I have is Al Whitlam. Public matter, public meeting. Go ahead.
My name's Al Whitlam. I'm here with Ruth Vogel. We're with the Leeds Federation of Agriculture, representing farmers in this area. And the concern I'm bringing up here tonight is, and it clearly states in the Drainage Act, you must have sufficient adequate outlet for the drains. No, we don't. And this has been going on for quite a few years, where Wiltsey Creek is plugged up with sediment and silt, and it's affecting land downstream. Back of our farm, it gets underwater, and we don't need that. And Mara Shaw from Cataraqui Conservation Authority, she's no longer there. She's with National Farmers Union now, but she did a report in 2008, I believe, and it said that Wiltsey Creek must be cleaned out for adequate drainage no later in 2014. And this has been dragging on and on and on. We've addressed council on this issue a dozen times in the last 20 years or more, and just seems to get swept under the table, and that definitely needs cleaning out. And the other thing is the mandatory reports from the drainage superintendents. They're to report to council frequently. Do you have copies of them going back for the last 10 or 15 years?
I'm sure that they're on file.
You've seen them? Okay, so how do we get copies of them?
I can't say for certain we have them on file. I know that Councillor Lackey just mentioned that he's seen them, but you said they're from 2014 from Cataraqui Conservation Authority?
Yeah, Mara Shaw wrote a report that said that Wiltsey Creek, where the drain goes into Smith Folger drain goes in, must be cleaned out down to the lake. And it's just one mess there. There's been incidents where 2 or 3 canoeists have got stuck in the bogs down there because it's all built up with silt. And there's basically, it's destroyed all wildlife in that area. There's no muskrats, no beavers and if we're gonna have a drain and we're gonna improve the drain right now, you gotta make sure that the outlet is working. And the other thing, do they have catch basins for it? And how often are the catch basins cleaned out? That is an important thing, that you gotta have silt traps there, and those silt traps, they need cleaning once a year or once every 5 years. They need cleaning out. And all you gotta do is go down Russell Road, where the Smith Bulger drain goes through in the springtime, and the mud that's washing down that road is unbelievable. And into the ditch, and it goes into the outlet of the Smith Bulger drain, and it's one heck of a mess. I got pictures of it if you want to see them. So that's all I got to say. It definitely needs cleaning out. And Bob Griffin here, from Griffin's Lakeside Cottages, he's worked on the same issue, and we haven't made any steps forward. But you clean out the drain at this end, you let all the silt go down below. Yep.
Okay, are you finished making your comments?
Yep.
Okay. Counselor Lackey, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. I've had the unfortunate privilege of being involved with this since day one, and Mr. Whitlam is absolutely correct. It was a small group of concerned individuals with regards to the outlet of Wilsey Creek and Gananoque Lake is where this whole thing began. It was referred to drainage superintendents and various engineers who didn't share that opinion, which has led us down this road to where we are now. I believe that Cataraqui Conservation did come and do sediment testing. I remember that well. I think they went through a few pairs of rubber boots and a couple of boats, but anyway, there is a silt problem. It was acknowledged. Nothing was done. It was all basically to council's defense in the information that was given was that the problem stemmed further upstream. We have to start there. Not all that smart sometimes, but I would think you'd want your outlet done before you start feeding it. But anyway, how we got here is from that small group of people who all they wanted was to, even if we tried it to get rid of the sediment out of the mouth of Wilsey Creek, I think would have went a long way. And here we are, which I think is a total debacle. And I feel bad for all of you people. But here we are, and I think we need to put our heads together and come up with a good conclusion.
So, so just to the consultant and to the point that Counselor Lackey just made specific to the drains that we were speaking about this evening. Part of the process for updating those drains was to change the bank slopes so that erosion wasn't the case. So I'm assuming this is to prevent the amount of silt going in. Is that I am not a drainage expert, so I need you to explain this to me clearly.
So there are a few points that I don't disagree with. The drain that outlets to Wilsey Creek is the Smith Bulgers. There is a separate appointment and a meeting to consider that is this one. Creek Road itself is somewhat elevated from the Smith Bulgers. And we've determined in this case that the Smith Bulgers provide sufficient outlet for Creek Road itself. The determination for whether Smith Bulgers has sufficient outlet through Wilsey Creek is separate and to be considered at that time under that report when it's presented, but that's not what we're here for tonight.
But my question is, you talked about putting in stone for erosion, for silt maintenance. I forget the term that you
Bank
used.
flattening, vegetation, sediment traps,
Sediment traps.
rock control check dams. If we want to talk about Smith Bulgers itself, there's a permanent sediment erosion control feature that's proposed for that one that would come up at that report. But there's ways to control the sediment both in the drains, such as Creek Road. Part of the Smith Bulgers report was that Creek Road supposedly transported a lot of sand, so there's features on that drain to stop the sand from coming from further upstream and being transmitted to the Smith Bulgers, which eventually makes its way out. So there are control features that are proposed for both this drain and the Smith Bulgers, should it be implemented. But yeah, the Smith Bulgers is a separate.
So there's more to this than just the engineering, but it's also to modernize. So to the point that was made earlier, while I have no stance on whether we should go ahead with what has been proposed versus change it or what have you. But what is being considered is a different way of constructing a drain based on changes in slope, changes in this sediment filtration, all of that stuff, correct? Okay, correct. Okay, so go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Lackey. Was there any conversation back then as to who's going to pay for that? The Wiltsey Creek cleanout? Was there going to be assessed something like the drainage? The landowners would be assessed?
That's where we are now. It had to be incorporated into one of the municipal drains to be built out.
It would be built out in the same.
Because we were told that it was in fact part of the outlet.
Right. So anybody from the mouth of that, where that bog came loose from the 1,000-acre marsh back in the day, that Bob could remember well, and it sits there 25, 30 years later going nowhere. Now it's rooted. Well, it's an island now. But just for clarity, it was discussed then that that's how that would be paid for. Everybody from there back would be assessed the value. Just for historical, do we know the fall from the top of, say, Smith Bulger drain down to Russell Road, the Wiltsey or Russell Road Bridge? And the reason I ask, in the spring of the year, that water comes through there at quite a pace. And granted, volume can create that. You can do that after 4 inches of rain as well. But is there a reasonable fall from the head out to the outlet of that water? Of course, do you know?
The minimum fall on the train is 0.05%. There are portions that are steeper than that. The bottom end is quite flat. The bottom end actually in some places probably has a 0% slope, so it is flat, and it's just, but it's all, and the bottom end is also controlled by the lake level of Gananoque Lake.
It is.
So there is some backwater effect to it, and it will naturally accumulate sediment in there.
Right.
And we do have permanent sediment control features, which are meant to be concentrated clean out areas. So if you come back in 5 or 10 years to do a clean out, you may only have to do a clean out of a couple 100 feet of drain rather than the whole drain, because that's where the sediment will be. So we've incorporated those features, and they're meant to control the sediment going into the future.
That's true. Marble Rock controls a lot of what comes back this way from that. Just for what it's worth, South Nation River undertook a huge leap of faith, if you will, and dug a very flat-lined water course for a long way. Time flies, 20, 30 years ago. A lot of it was done with an amphibious excavator. And it was done in winter months, spring months. I remember seeing pictures of it done. There was a lot of controversy at the time. That could be referenced to see how they divvied that up, but it would have been done the same way. But all said and done, it was a win in the end. I think going back to Karen Davis's comments, today is today. We don't really need to worry about what happened when this was assessed in 1982 or 74. we have to deal with today's standards. We also have Mother Nature kicking in with frequent rainfall. One farmer I follow on Facebook is informing us that we've had over 2 feet of rainfall this summer alone. That may happen frequently. We don't know that. Time will tell. But we can incorporate these meetings and sit and have specific meetings, not like tonight that's going to turn into just a drainage meeting, but we can have specific meetings. Council can call those and discuss them and investigate what it's going to cost to do this. And that'd be a separate entity from what we're dealing with here, but it's not that it can't be done. Thank you.
So the motion that's on the floor is specific to the Creek Road municipal drain, and that staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration, which would then we would decide whether we move forward or not. So that motion remains on the floor. So is there any comment or question from council members? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? As carried. So everybody who is on the list, who put their name on the list for this evening, will be part of being informed for the next council meeting that will be specific to these 2 drains and what next steps will be. So if you have further comments or questions, please feel free to email either Director Holiday or Aaron Hatton, our drainage specialist, who will make sure that our consultant gets the information. And we can also make sure that any communications about the follow-up meeting is communicated to you so that you are aware. So that's the biggest thing. If your name is not out there, then you won't get an email directly from us, which means that you'll have to watch the website for the upcoming meeting. So just please, on your way out, put your name and phone number down and your email address, and we'll make sure we communicate with you when the next meeting is going to be held. And with that, it is 25 after 8. We will break for 10 minutes for a comfort break, and then we will reconvene at 8:46, please. Thank you. 36. Club.
My job's real hard today. My job is so hard today. I wish I had your job today. I'll take that. Do you want to trade for the rest of the meeting?
Okay, so we are going to reconvene this committee of the whole for the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. Can I ask somebody to close that door so that we don't have any background? Thank you, chief or consultant. Thank you. Chief consultant. Now I have to find my agenda. Pardon me. Hang on. Okay, so we're at 6.2 and both of those have passed and they will be coming forward for first and second reading. Now, 6.3, which is the establishment of court of revision, I'm going to put it on the table, but based on what we learned this evening, this should not be established until either of the previous motions are ratified by first and second reading. Okay, so this motion will come to the floor, but I will ask for someone to move to defer it until we have established first and second reading. So motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The Committee of the Whole recommends Council receive the report regarding the role of and establishing the Court of Revision, that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council appoint the following 3 members of Council to sit on the Court of Revision, and that those items are blank. So with that, so Councillor Maybe, you already moved this, so you can't, I'll have, so Kelman is moving to defer and Lackey is seconding the deferral, correct? Okay. Okay. So, I'm gonna vote, call the vote on the deferral. All those in favor of deferring the motion? All those opposed? And that is carried. Okay, next item on the agenda is moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve a zoning bylaw amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaws 07-079 as attached to report number planning and development 2024-069 as exhibit A to establish general provisions in the zoning bylaw to permit encroachments into required yards for accessibility structures, introduce a new definition for barrier-free building components, and to exempt accessibility structures from the calculation of lot coverage. So this is in regards to the planning, the public meeting we had prior to Committee of the Whole this evening. And there was some minor discussion at that public meeting. So are there any further questions from council in regards to this? Nope. Okay, I will call a question. All those in favor, all those opposed, and it is carried. Thank you very much. Next item, moved by Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve bylaw as attached to Planning and Development 2024-080 as Exhibit A to rezone the property at 455 Hague Road to site-specific AG-12 agricultural zone to prohibit a dwelling from being constructed on the property. So, any further discussion? Again, this was part of our public meeting. And is now on our Committee of the Whole agenda. Have no hands up. I will call the question. All those in favor, all those opposed, carried. Next item, moved by Deputy Mayor Fody. Oh, conflict. Sorry. I was like, sorry, I hadn't moved I knew you were 6.6. My apologies. So, let the minutes reflect that Councillor Fody has left the room due to the conflict. Or sorry, Councillor Lackey. I'm getting tired, obviously. I apologize. Councillor Lackey has left the room for item 6.6, which is Leeds County OPP Detachment Board remuneration for the board members. Moved by Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the remuneration rates for the Leeds County OPP Detachment Board as recommended by the board per board meeting rate. Council appointee, $100 per board meeting. A community representative appointee, $100 per board meeting. Provincial appointee, $100 per board meeting. Per diem rate for board-related business, $300. And that the travel, meal, and hospitality expenses directive issued by the Government of Ontario as may be amended, updated, or replaced from time to time shall be used / be followed in respect of board-related travel, meal, and hospitality expenses. So that motion is on the floor. Obviously, Councillor Lackey is our representative on that board, and I did note that when I spoke to Mayor Hugenboom, who was helping set up this board, this was quite a lengthy discussion, but based on previous police services boards that this is sort of the run of the mill. So just with that information, do with what you will. Is there any questions or comments in regards to it? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe, and then Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. One of the things that I noted was the mileage that they have calculated here. And that I believe it is below the provincial standard, but I am looking for it now. And of course, I can't find it on their document, but
Well, I'm sure it'll be
Yeah.
amended
Yeah.
according to whatever the provincial standard.
it's way below when you start calculating kilometers. Yeah, thanks.
Any further comment or, oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I don't know if we can interject here a lot. One issue I had when I read this whole report is that hospitality includes the payment of alcohol.
It does.
I have a real, it says, I have a real issue with taxpayers picking up a tab for alcohol of any kind. If you want to have alcohol at these functions, get out your own wallet or credit card and help yourself. Perhaps our best way to handle a kind of a complicated whole proposal here is just to pass it on through our member, Councillor Lackey, that, he can handle that whichever way he chooses up the line.
I think that is a relatively reasonable way of dealing with it. However, by approving the motion as it sits, is that it is written that it can cover liquor and beer.
You're right, it can be, but if we have a member there expressing concerns that it shouldn't be, but we'll leave that.
Well, I think we've trained all of our members of this council very well in that whenever we are attending functions, we pay if
Right.
we choose to imbibe, that we are going to do that on our own dime and not the taxpayers. So
Right.
anyways, okay. So the motion is as it's presented. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, all those opposed, and it is carried. Okay. Now we can go get Mr. Lackey. So the next item is 6.7, information regarding minor variance application number D13-2024-039, One Whirlpool Island Committee of Adjustment recommendation to refund fees. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson. The committee of the whole recommend that council support the recommendation of the Committee of Adjustment to refund the minor variance application fee for application D13-2024-039, Jeffrey McEwen. Any discussion on this motion? I think the report identifies why the recommendation is to refund. Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Next item is authority to accept conveyance of a portion of Black Rapids Road to the township. So moved by Deputy Mayor Fody and seconded by Councillor Maybe that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required to accept the conveyance of the portion of Black Rapids Road to the township identified as Part 4 on reference plan 28R15867. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. When I read this, the first thing I caught, I'm aware of this proposal and the properties involved. I think there's a typo here. It should be a portion of Sand Bay Road, not Black Rapids. The applicant lives on Black Rapids Road. The property in question is on Sand Bay Road. I phoned the applicant myself this afternoon for clarity in case I was about to misspeak, and they told me every bit as much. And if you look at that, this pictorial here, it's actually not a pictorial, it's a surveyor. And in small print down at the bottom, where it states in a little bit larger print, traveled road, right underneath that, it's referred to as Sand Bay Road. And the point in question is right there. There's a bald rock just before one of my good neighbors down the road. And quite frankly, nobody wants to own it or move it to put the road straight through. It'll only increase speed, but it'll cost the township about $500,000 to move the rock.
So there needs to be an amendment to this motion to
Yeah,
be a portion of Sand Bay Road, not
Right.
Black Rapids Road.
I don't want to speak on the submission by the planner, but I think it's just a typo error in the sense that the
Okay.
resident lives on.
So I need a motion to amend this to be a portion of Sand Bay Road, not Black Rapids Road. And the planner has confirmed that that is correct. So I have Amendment to change Black Rapids to Sand Bay. Okay, and the motion comes forward from Counselor Lackey. And the seconder was Ms. Kelman, I think. Okay, so I'm going to ask for any discussion on the amendment. If not, I'm calling the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. So the amended motion reads that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required to accept the conveyance of the portion of Sand Bay Road to the township identified as Part 4 on reference plan 28R 15867. So I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Okay, so we're on to number 7, which is unfinished business, which I'm not sure that any of us thought we would see this evening. Anyways, go ahead, Councilor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, it's been almost 2 months since I asked the question. 401 light at the Highway 2.
We have had no further contact with MTO, and we did not take a delegation to AMO in regards to that, but Roma is coming up, so I almost got T-boned there the other day, so I would say that it's probably worth it. And I was not speeding, for the record. Anyway. Counselor Jameson, unfinished business.
Unfinished, just to mention that we still haven't seen any action on the Furnace Falls Bridge, nor the safety measures, and the condition of the bridge appeared to remain the same as they were some years ago, let alone some months ago. So left in your capable hands, and I know there are challenges to get the county moving, but thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for the reminder. I shall bring it up at our next variance meeting where the money still remains sitting on the books of to the tune of $1 million for repairs to that bridge, which have not happened as of yet. Anyways, let alone the safety measures that have been requested as part of that project. Unfinished business. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to our Director of Operations. There's a lot of unfinished business that's being finished. Can we get a quick update on all your projects and how they're making out, or do you have a time to read them all?
Don't forget, there's going to be a quiz.
Well, you know, I know there's a lot on your table and the staff, but I see a lot of successes popping up here, there, and all over, and I just wondered how it's all playing out. And I saw a little tidbit that you shared with the members of the Historical Society, I believe, on the start point of Springfield House and Escott Hall to name the new start, but I'll let you answer that.
Yep. So the Escott and Springfield, that's a gift that just keeps on giving. I know the Director of Planning Development just dropped something in my lap. I think it was today, that there may have been a church at that location previously. So we definitely have to do some archaeological investigation there. We had committed to it at the Heritage Committee anyway. So we have engineers, we have structural engineers, we have architects working on that project to get it tender ready. We have to do an archaeological investigation. Starting to look at, the exterior of Springfield House in conjunction with the exterior work that we plan to do on the Escott facility as well. No better time to do, roofs and repointing when you have the roof and repointing guys there looking at another building. So trying to tie all of that stuff together, looking at sub drains and blue skin on the walls and everything to try to make it as dry as possible. The drawings are I'd say 95% for the interior of the building. We have HVAC design, electrical, plumbing, structural finishes. So we're really close to getting that out the door. That'll be a big one to get behind us. Working with the fire chief on the new fire hall, and I think I can speak for both of us when I say we're pleased with the way that's moving along. They had hoped by the end of this month to have everything closed in, which would be a great time to have council and the fire department do a walkthrough of the building and see sort of what the new digs look like. Road projects, the Jonas Street Bridge, the Carding Mills Bridge is open now to the public. We completed that in advance of the Turkey Fair as we had hoped. Darya Road is being resurfaced this week. They started prepping everything today. The turnaround roads are now resurfaced. The Kidd Road south, north of 2, but south of the tracks, we had a bit of resurfacing in there. That's done. The Village Estates and Shamrock Road, that project is now complete. Driveway's tied in and everything, so all the paving is complete. Microsurfacing is all done, seal coat's all done, so we're in really good shape to wrapping up the summer and all of our projects and getting back to doing all of our maintenance stuff. And yes, included in the microsurfacing, Robertson Road, some microsurfacing up in the village of Sealy's Bay. We've kind of been everywhere.
Days Road.
Days Road, yes, that's correct. Yep.
So
That's
what
us.
Dave means to say is that all the things that were on the list that we approved for budget are
done.
pretty much done or about to be done,
Correct.
which is pretty amazing. So thank you. Thank you very much, Director Holliday.
Oh,
We
it's-
know that it's a lot.
It's not me, it's a team of people and departments, so yeah, we all work together to get this stuff done.
And keeping in mind that it's always difficult in the summer months because we're trying to accommodate everybody's holidays and everything too. We also had a great contingent of students that were here this summer, which was, another bunch of bodies that we're needing some guidance, and we were short-staffed a little bit in certain places, and there's lots of people who pick up that slack, but all in all, we managed to keep everything running. Well, not we, them. I'm just putting the information out there because I was here not as much as I would have liked this summer due to my own familial challenges and hospital stays. So thank you very much for that brief update on what's going on in operations. Much appreciated. Do you want to give anything in the planning side? I know that planning applications, you are at the same as last year, I think.
Just that planning and building continues to be busy and having a high volume, and thanks to a great team, I've been able to do the acting CAO role and cover for the clerk. So it's been a busy summer.
It hasn't been a busy summer because I think Marnie was thrust into the covering the clerk, and just to be very clear, Amanda has stepped up to be here this evening, and thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that it can be stressful, especially when you have a room full of people that come to say, because most of the time nobody is that enthusiastic about our meetings, but it was great to see the gallery full this evening, and Amanda has handled it under easy, great, graceful, very mindful, very demure. Sorry, that's a TikTok thing. Anyways, any other unfinished business? No unfinished business. So what I will say is that there are two things at the county that I can comment on. One, the lawyers have been engaged in regards to the CN challenge, and that is ongoing. And I will continue to follow up on that in regards to Highway 32 and the washout. Number 2, County Road 13 was awarded to George Tackaberry and Sons this morning and ratified. The contract is done. Now, it says that it is intended to be completed prior to the end of 2024. I am going to move mountains to ensure that that happens. It always has that caveat, weather permitting, but I might hold the rain clouds myself to make sure that it gets done, because this has been a very long time waiting for the individuals on County Road 13. So I will be sending them an email because that only happened this morning. So, and other unfinished business, I think actually unfinished business, AMO. We had 2 delegations at AMO that went very well. One was with the parliamentary assistant for infrastructure in regards to our HUSIF application, which was denied in the first round. We just received today response from the ministry in regards to what our shortcomings were on our original application and how we could potentially make a better application, which is due September the 16th, 30th. Yusuf, I think the second intake was very short turnaround. Anyways, so the whole point is that go ahead, sorry.
Opportunity, did we not hire a consultant to do our,
Grant writing, that particular one was done by that was done by JL Richards because it was highly technical because of the whatever, but the grant writing continues to move forward on other grants that we've applied for with Grant Match, right? Director Holiday?
That is correct.
Okay.
Sorry, just touching base on the dates. The applications need to be submitted to TPON by 4:59 on November the 1st, 2020.
Oh, November the 1st. My apologies. Thank you. So this one was in regards to the additional water storage for Lansdowne. This because of the technicality and the number of houses and that sort of thing. That's why it was done by JL Richards rather than Grant Match, because it needed to speak to the technical standards that the province wants in regards to infrastructure. No, that is not the case. And here's how I'm going to refute that, not because I'm looking to pick a fight, because I made it very clear that I was very disappointed with the fact that we have not asked for anything major in this municipality in the last almost 6 years. We have applied for a number of grants and not been denied, or not have been successful. I'm starting to wonder that if being fiscally responsible and well financially planned is to our detriment, which I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm not really, because I've had a discussion with our member of provincial parliament. We have applied for 3 things this year and not been successful to date. However, we are reapplying for HUSIF. There was $2.9 billion in applications for $853 million worth of money. The only municipality in this in Leeds and Grenville that received funds under HUSIF was Gananoque for the East Pumping Station. North Grenville I think there were 10 municipalities out of 13 in Leeds and Grenville that applied, and only 1 got it. Carleton Place got 35 million. North Grenville got nothing. So very large, highly growing, fast populations. I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason. I'm sure there is. However, they've put this second sweep for, and I forget how many hundreds of millions they put into this. Was it another 200 million? Sorry, Dave. 250. It's another 250 million for this second intake. So we're not going right back to the drawing board. We're going to augment and better the application based on the feedback we got. Correct?
Expect more information in the October council meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. So we also had another delegation with the Minister McCarthy, who's in charge of cemeteries, which seems very exciting. And actually we had a really great conversation with him and actually might have moved the needle. So Councillor Kelman, Deputy Mayor Fody, and myself, along with David Holiday, were at that delegation and made some suggestions on how they might change the expectations for cemetery boards to financially weather infinity, if you will, because there's only one transaction that ever happens at the time of death. And literally it's in perpetuity. So we made some suggestions and they were very receptive and looking forward to potentially coming forward with some changes. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Sorry. Oh, sorry. MPP Clark sat in with us on that. And with our HUSIF application with infrastructure, Michael Jiggins was there. We went in a little bit early, so he came in partially the way through. So all in all, AMO was a good conference. And just to also indicate that Mayor Jones from the village of Westport was successful in becoming the president of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is great for us in this area. And she's a great advocate as she relinquished her role as president of Roma. Any other unfinished business? Okay, go ahead to other business. Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know that some of these that I might mention are something you might talk about. One of the things I happened to be checked on Daria Road, and I did get stopped, and they were actually wondering why there wasn't a notice put in their mailboxes. I realize that we do use electronics a lot, but to that point, not everybody does. So I don't know whether, and we alluded to this on the drainage about communication too. So people who are adversely affected by any of these decisions, is there a possibility of having something sent to them by mail? And some of the people are saying, no, they didn't receive anything, as much as we do have electronic means. So we need to maybe do something there. So I'll just leave it at that as a comment. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Director
I'll
Holiday.
definitely take that into consideration on the projects. One of the things that we did do this year was implement our variable message board.
Mhm.
And we had that out on site for, I believe it was 2 weeks, with notifying people of the impending
That's cool.
delays as a result. But yeah, certainly we can consider that, putting something in the mail as well.
Yeah, just, every avenue, I think, is a opportunity to let them know.
Yeah.
And stops questions for us later on.
It was certainly challenging out on Daria Road.
Yes.
The traffic counts on that one were 300 plus cars per day.
I know.
It was a busy road.
Yeah, it is, always has been. So, yeah, thank you for that. A couple of things here. The OLG is coming next week, but you'll talk about that. Terry Fox is on the 15th. And again, there's Leeds and Thousand Islands and the Gananoque. Leeds at 9, Town again at 10. And Dave, you have something you're going to bring me for that?
Yes, sir. We have purchased a porta potty that will be out on site by the lighthouse for that
Excellent.
event.
Excellent. Thank you. They'll be very appreciative of that. And then let's see here. The Pride in Gananoque, the flag's going up on the 27th. They have an event on the 28th down at the Joel Stone Park. Something to be conscious of. And we talked about this earlier, Dave, the Maple Grove Road. Actually, I talked to Aaron about it. The brushing that had happened, the people or the residents who have talked to me are very happy in what's happened so far and look forward to the rest of it being done to safeguard on some of those blind corners. And again, on the 26th, the Chamber of Commerce Gala, which I've already communicated with about going. And I know last year the township did look after the council that did go, and I don't know whether that's happening again this year. I haven't heard one way or the other. I think, Phil, that may have been sent to you after I sent that email about the Chamber of Commerce Gala on the 26th at at the casino. And I know last year there were a number of us who went, and council picked up that. So just passing it on. So if that's something, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, any other business? Okay, I'll move on to notices of motion. Any notices of motion? I have no notices of motion. For the mayor's update, I'll make it as quick as I can, but September is full of things to do. As already indicated, the OLG event, which is on September the 12th at the Furnace Falls Farm. This is an extremely important event. We have all of the people who benefit from our grants program come, and the OLG loves our event. So it's our turn to host it. It was Gananoque's last time. But what it does is it showcases what it does in the community, which is much more exciting for OLG than many other municipalities who literally put the money into sewer pipes. So not such as a celebratory event, whereas they get to see the kids and the organizers who benefit from all the great things that are done in our community. And so they really enjoy our particular event. Calling all community organizations, community grants program, fall intake is open and applications are due on September 6th. So that's the end of this week. And same date for the community improvement plan. Fall intake is also open. Please contact our planning and development department to arrange a time to review the proposed project and discuss specific application requirements, and applications are also due September 6th. So two very, very important retirements. Congratulations to Ian Robertson, who was our district chief for our fire service, who is officially retired. And we thank Ian for 48 years of service here in this township as a volunteer firefighter. It's an incredible accomplishment. And I know that he has served our community well and mentored many young firefighters coming up through the ranks, and will be around for, the odd cheering section if we ever need him to be. So we appreciate all his effort to serving this community. Also, Karen Simpson of Sealy's Bay, the postmistress. Everybody knew Karen. And after 50 years of working for Canada Post, 48 years specifically in the Sealy's Bay post office, 48 years. It's just hard to believe that someone would stick it out and have to put up with Mark Jameson coming in a day in and day out. I know that Karen also was a very beloved part of the community, and I know that people will miss her face in there, but I don't believe that she's going far either. So if you happen to come across Karen in your travels, please wish her all the best in a very well-deserved retirement. And so another list of things that are happening. Truffle Shuffle, September 29th in Centennial Park in Sealy's Bay. Don't miss it. If you like to run or walk, it's a great day. And thank you to Derek and Cindy from Ridge White Chocolate who sponsor this. And it's always great to see the number of people that come out even from Kingston to be part of it. The Food Bank Drive is happening on September 28th, and there's 3 locations: Lansdowne Fresh Mart, Lyndhurst Library, and Sealy's Bay Fresh Mart. So they will be taking donations for the food bank. So if you are planning on making a donation food-wise or cash-wise or check-wise, they are willing to take all denominations that are, legal currency, as well as bags of goods. Turkey Fair is September 21st in Lyndhurst. And again, Pride Weekend in Gananoque is September 27th and 29th. And lastly, September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day here in Canada. And it is also a holiday here at the township office. So I'm just letting everybody know well in advance. Did I miss any events that I need to? The only other thing that I will say, folks, counselors, when you receive your package for next week's meeting, please pay close attention to the audit that is coming through. I know that Phil, our treasurer, wants to talk to every single one of you. There are it's all good news. I don't want to, just to preempt it. It's all very good news, but there is some changes with asset retirement obligation and PSAP, which is the accounting stuff that he's got to do. It's very technical. But there are some changes in how it's making things look. So I highly, highly recommend that once you get your package, or if you'd like to come in and discuss that with Phil, that Phil would make time to see you, to have that witty banter that helps understand all of the financial stuff. I say this because when I was going through the document with Phil, I struggled a little bit at the beginning. I've got it now. I'm not sure I could explain it, but I'm going to leave it to the expert. So when you get your package, please take the time to reach out to Phil to get any further clarity you may need. And with that, no other information. So I'm going to put a motion to adjourn, and it's 9:10. Didn't need to extend. So moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the committee of the whole adjourn. All those in favor, all those opposed, and we're carried. Thank you.